So we would love to know how the expert does it.
Well, I think like almost anything else in life, including sports and academics or whatever you want to do in life, it just takes a lot of practice. And if you want to be good at something, you just have to practice it a lot. And of course, for anything, you try and learn from others. You try and research so you understand and learn from other people, whether that's directly or lessons learned from books or other media or the internet. And then, of course, you just have to get out there and practice.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I am a, let me go ahead and see if we can bring up my, I was trying to bring up my share video. So now maybe you can see me. I don't know how your material there is. What was your question one more time, please?
Oh, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I grew up on a small farm in North Carolina. I didn't have a lot of money, so that's one reason. I loved airplanes, so that's one reason why I became good at paper airplanes, was because I didn't have much money. I had access, like anyone else, to a lot of paper, and I wanted to have something that would fly well. So I just tried to make my paper airplanes fly better, and I did that by both experimenting and also reading books about real airplanes and applying it to my paper airplanes. Now, luckily, I had this interest in flight, and as I grew older, I had an interest in math and science, and so that's the reason why I chose to become an aeronautical engineer. So as I became older, I got my degree in aeronautical engineering, and then I became an engineer for Boeing, and I worked in St. Louis for many years on jet fighters like the F-18 and the AV-8B Harrier vertical takeoff and landing jet. And then in the last 7 years, I've gone to work for the United States Air Force in Florida, doing research on mainly small airplanes, but all kinds of different flight systems.
We might need to know what an aeronautic engineer is, Mr. Blackburn.
Okay, so I think everyone's has heard of the word engineer before. Can we get a volunteer from your audience to volunteer and answer what is an engineer?
Yep. Can you stand up? And let's make sure we get you in the microphone. You have to talk loudly.
Someone who makes or fixes electronics, like mobiles or something.
Okay, that's not a bad answer. Engineers do make things and they fix things. There are a lot of electrical engineers out there, so that would include electrical engineers, computer engineers, and even as an aeronautical engineer, I even do work with computers and software. But does anyone else want to offer anything else about what an engineer is or what they do?
Come on up. What's your name? Daniela? Okay, this is Daniela. Go ahead. Oh, Danielle. Okay, look at the camera. This way. There you go, honey. Okay, go ahead. We talked about etiquette before we came that we should be looking at you. And so she was looking at you and I was trying to get her on the camera. Go ahead.
Okay.
An engineer is someone who builds things like cars or anything big.
Very good. All right, so that's kind of mechanical. So you had the first student kind of pointed out that they understand and design and build electrical things, and she just mentioned that maybe they do like cars and other mechanical things. And in fact, they're both right. Engineers are the people who design and help build and manufacture almost anything that we see and touch and use. I've heard them described as problem solvers, which I think is kind of a good basic understanding. if you have, no matter what you have in there, like right now you're looking at a projector, a screen. Someone had to design and build that projector and understand how it works and figure out how to make it work. And those were all engineers. So everything you touch and feel and use in your life, that's what an engineer does. They figure out how to do all that stuff. So I'm kind of a problem solver, and I'm an aeronautical engineer. So basically, I'm a problem solver for aeronautical things or airplanes and things that fly. So I've had I worked for Boeing, like I said, so I worked in trying to help make jet fighters fly better. And now I'm doing research with the Air Force, working with wind tunnels and prototype airplanes and other things to try and understand how to make airplanes fly better.
And then you said that you went from loving paper airplanes as a child to following that through to a grown-up, and you do that, you work with planes for a job, but we also know that you still like to play with paper airplanes.
Absolutely. So to me, anything that flies is still kind of magical, and to see anything in flight, you said that you saw my world record video, so you got to see the airplane kind of floating through the air, and to me that's still pretty amazing. Not necessarily the world record, but just to see anything fly through the air and how something can appear to float in air that's so thin and so I still am fascinated by it. And the simplest way for me to, even today, have fun with airplanes is to make a paper airplane. So yeah, and I do also have the privilege of being able to go around to different places. Last weekend I was in Tampa at a museum. Now I'm talking to you. And in a few weeks I might have, and I'm still working out the details, the privilege of going over to Hong Kong to do a paper airplane presentation.
Wow, that's really interesting. Now, we know and we've learned that you need to know a thing or two about the science behind paper airplanes in order to make them fly. And we talked a little bit about thrust, lift, drag, and aerodynamics. So if you could talk to us a little bit about how you got your plane to stay in the air so long, we would appreciate it.
Okay. What I'm going to do, by the way, how much time do we have?
We have about 10 to 15 minutes. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that you got to be careful. You get an aeronautical engineer describing why things fly, and I could be here for days.
Okay.
But the simple answer on what makes it fly and fly well is that of course, anything that flies, of course, you've got weight, and what keeps something, a paper airplane or a real airplane, from falling to the ground? Anyone in the audience?
Does anybody remember what that is? Okay. Can you say it nice and loud, George? Stand up, buddy. Nice and loud. Okay. Were you able to hear him?
Say it nice and loud, George. Lift.
Lift. So I heard him say lift, and that's absolutely correct. So one of the experiments that sometimes I will do in person is I'll take a paper airplane in one hand. Well, I'll actually start with a paper airplane in both hands. I'll take one of those paper airplanes and I will crumple it up into a ball, the paper medium, and then throw them both forward. And one of them, of course, the paper ball will fall to the floor, and the paper airplane continues to fly forward. So why is it that the paper airplane doesn't fall like the paper ball?
Okay, let's see. Wade? You want to stand up, bud? You can come a little closer, too, since you're real close. Wait.
It has balance to keep it up.
A little bit louder, babe.
It has balance to keep it up.
All right. So balance. So that's an important part of any paper airplane. I think maybe you can see my paper airplane on the screen. So it has to balance. But just like the previous student said, it's got lift. Okay, so the wings basically hold it and keep it from falling to the ground. So, but balance is extremely important because any airplane, like a paper airplane, behaves like a seesaw. How many in the audience have ever been on a seesaw? Let me see a show of hands. Okay, so can someone tell me if someone jumps off one end of the seesaw, what happens to the other person?
Okay, nice and loud. What do they do, honey? If someone gets off.
Someone jumps off.
If someone would jump off, the other person would go falling to the ground.
Exactly. So airplanes are very much the same way. If you put too much weight on one end or too much weight on the other end, it'll make that end fall. And so for an airplane to fly right, it has to be balanced so it doesn't tip like a seesaw. All right, so that's one reason why balance is so important. And in general, the problem with airplanes is that they have too much weight on the tail. So that's who's ever heard of putting a paper clip on the nose?
Anybody?
Ever heard of putting a paper clip on the nose of a paper airplane?
There's about,
A few people have.
yeah, like 20 out of 150.
Okay, but that's really based in the science of flight because I worked on the F-18 and there was one model where we needed to add lead to the nose of the F-18, effectively putting a big paper clip on the nose to make it balance better. So certainly you need the lift, you need balance, and I don't know if you've had a chance to see my world record airplane. It's that square airplane, but there are a lot of folds of paper on the nose to put a lot of weight on the nose to make it balance properly. So what the student said about it needs to balance is very important. Of course, it takes a good throw, but as the airplane goes through the air, the wings create lift to keep it from plummeting to the air. Now, eventually, any paper airplane, if you throw it, will eventually have to descend to the ground. So, one way I like to make an analogy is a bicycle. So, if everyone's riding a bicycle, all right, if you stop pedaling, what will happen? Can someone tell me what happens if you're riding a bicycle and you stop pedaling? I see a few hands.
It will slow down and then eventually stop.
Very good. Now, who can tell me why does it slow down if you stop pedaling? That's a little more complicated. I think most people know it will slow down, and that's very good. But why does it slow down?
That's good, Connor. Just talk nice and loud.
You're not pushing it. It's not getting pushed, so it doesn't have a movement to go forward.
Did you hear that, Mr. Blackburn?
So it's not getting pushed, right?
Yep.
Now, if you had the moon keeps orbiting the Earth, but no one pushes on the moon. So what's the difference? Why do you need to keep pushing on a bicycle to keep it moving, but not like on the moon or a planet?
Brian?
There's gravity that's pulling the moon, and there's not gravity that's pulling the bicycle.
Well, I can kind of see that is kind of a difference in that, one's much bigger, and of course now gravity, of course, does hold your bicycle to the ground, and of course gravity also holds the moon in orbit. But one of the differences is that the bicycle has friction or drag, right? So air resistance, the tires rolling on the ground, that all tends to slow it down. Just like if you were to hold your hand out a car window, you can feel the air pushing back on your hand, and that slows you down. So the reason why you have to keep pedaling on your bicycle is because the wind is pushing you backwards, and you have to keep pushing forward to keep it from slowing you down. All right? So is there a way to keep a bicycle moving without pedaling? Anyone?
We have somebody.
Okay.
If you're on
Nice and loud, hon.
If you're on a hill, you'll roll down the hill.
Very good. So in that case, gravity or your weight becomes your thrust or the force that keeps pushing you forward. And if you can imagine that if you were going straight down a hill, it's pulling you straight, full of gravity and all your weight's pulling you forward. And if you're on a slope, just a little bit of your weight is helping keep it going forward. But that's how a bicycle coasts down a hill. That's how a snow skier keeps skiing down a mountain. But that's also how a glider keeps moving forward. Even though the air resistance tries to slow it down, a glider keeps going forward by going downhill. And you saw my world record for airplane flight. That's how we keep moving forward, why it doesn't slow down, is that it slowly coasts downhill, and that's why it has to descend as it flies. You have any other questions?
We do have some. Yes, sir. Yes.
If you made your plane fly, how did it make it fly that long?
Okay, so how did I make my paper airplane fly for that long? I think most of you in that room have flown a paper airplane before. I'm guessing most of you probably haven't had one fly for that long. And the reason why it flies that long, first of all, the higher you throw the paper airplane, the longer it takes for it to come down. I threw that paper airplane about 70 feet high. All right, so that's a really fast throw, but that's the start point for how it flew for such a long time, is that I had to throw it really high up into the air. And the higher you get it, the longer it takes for it to come down.
We saw your takeoff, and you were like almost on the ground, and then you thrust yourself forward, like you know, to get the airplane up. So that was why you were trying to get it up really high?
Exactly. Because the faster I throw it, the higher it goes, and the longer it stays in the air. But even once you get it up that high, you have to adjust your airplane so it floats instead of plummeting. And so it takes a good paper airplane design, and a lot of paper airplane designs are good. But then the other thing I did was I bent the back edge of the wing up a little bit on each side. And what that does, remember the seesaw? By deflecting the air off the back of the airplane, it pushes down on the tail and it holds the nose up to keep it from nosediving. And that's how real airplanes work too. The pilot uses the control wheel to deflect the tail so it will keep the airplane from nosediving also. So that's how it flew for such a long time. I got it up really high, but then I made adjustments to it so it would float through the air by holding the nose up and keeping it from nosediving.
Do you have time for one or two more? Mr.
Sure.
Sugar? Okay. Ian? Wait, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Go ahead, bud. Nice and loud.
What? If you fold into a square, what does that do? What does it make the difference if it's a square or a triangle?
Good question.
That's a very good question. A lot of people are surprised that my world record airplane isn't like a pointy design like the one I'm holding. Right? They say, well, wouldn't a pointy one have less drag and therefore fly longer? But in fact, a square airplane is better at floating through the air. And as you saw from the video, my airplane kind of floats through the air. So I think it makes a little bit of sense that something with big wings, big square wings, can catch the air better and float better than something with skinny, pointy wings. So a lot of real airplanes will have wings that can go back. Normally those are really fast airplanes, ones that have to, like jet airplanes. A lot of small airplanes with propellers on them still have straight wings. Straight wings actually have less drag at low speed. They catch the wind better and allow the airplane to take off and land slower. And actually it takes less power to fly those at low speed. So a lot of slow airplanes will have straight wings. A lot of fast airplanes have pointy wings. I find that the pointed airplanes, like the one I'm holding, actually you can throw them a little bit faster, and they weather vane better, kind of like a weather vane on a house, or that shows you which way the wind is going. They weather vane better, so they fly straight better. You notice in the world record video, my world record airplane circles, the pointy airplanes are better at going straight. So the pointed ones are much better at distance and accuracy, and the square ones float better through the air.
Thank you. And we'll take one more. Is there a class that I didn't come? Drew? Mr. Hirschner? Yes. Nice and loud, buddy.
Was it fun when you made the paper airplanes?
Say it loud.
Was it fun when you made the paper airplanes?
Was it fun? Yes. And it's one of the things that really kind of why I continue to make paper airplanes is because they're fun. Now I have to admit, when you're in front of news media, because I had 2 or 3 news crews, I had set this event for months in advance, worked daily for 9 months getting ready for the world record attempt. So there was a lot of pressure on myself, just from myself, to try and do a good job. So I was very, very focused on trying to do a good job. But of course, once it's all over, there's a tremendous sense of accomplishment. Just like if you win a sporting event or you get a really good test score, just like anything that you work really hard for and then achieve, there's a great sense of satisfaction in achieving something. And so after it was all done, a great weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I was extremely happy. But during the event itself, I was very focused on trying to do the best I could.
Well, last year, Mr. Blackburn, you sent us your paper airplane design. And what we're going to do is, our next steps are we're going to be making your paper airplane, and we had our own design that we tested out, and we're going to have a chance to either change our design or use a different one, and we're going to compare them again. So it'll be interesting to see if our amount of time goes up. I know a lot of us were trying to throw it to make it go further instead of go higher. So now we know that. And so we'll let you know the results.
I would very much appreciate letting you know. I'll look forward to